Call to order the City Commission meeting of Monday, May 15th, 2017. Let the record show that all commissioners are present. Mr. Kessel, the order of business, is there any changes to the order of business?
We have two requests for changes this evening. The first is to add the DOT slurry seal bid consent to the consent agenda. I did email that out to you all earlier today, and you have a copy on your desks. And then the other would be to remove the elder care contract. We received a call this afternoon that they are not prepared. So if we could, I'd like to make a request that we add one and subtract the other.
Okay. There's one addition and one subtraction to the timetable and non-timetable. So look for a motion to approve the order of business.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to approve in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Order of business is approved. Consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that commissioners would like to discuss? Hearing nothing, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second on the consent agenda. Any further discussion or questions for staff? Hearing none, we'll vote. Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We do have five timetable agenda. On the timetable agenda, we have 5 items, but we'll move into the non-timetable. And since elder care is off, we'll move right into reports. Mr. Kessel.
Thank you. My first report then is the Discovery dinners. We do have one scheduled right now for June 12th at 5 p.m. Attorney Kripe will be presenting on disc profiles. But I have a request for you to consider. The budget books are in, and we'd like to distribute those to the commission and have a time to review those books with you as well. But we want to make sure we do that before the next budget season begins, and that time is upon us pretty quickly. So if we could add a Tuesday, May 30th Discovery dinner at 5 p.m., that's what we'd like to do, and the topic would be a review of the 2017 budget books. Myself and Deputy City Administrator Carlson would run that meeting. So I don't know if the 30th at 5 p.m. works in your schedules, but if it does, we'd like to request that we add that night.
Mr. President, I will be out of town, so I will be unable to make that.
How does it look on everyone else's schedule?
Looks okay here.
Should be okay.
Yeah, I think.
Commissioner Jennings, are you able the next night, maybe? I'd really like for you to be there.
I'm getting married, so I'll be gone.
Okay.
But possibly we can record it, or maybe even
Yeah, that's a good
do
idea.
FaceTime. I can attend that way, but I will be on.
Yeah, I have an open date too.
So the 30th at 5 works for everybody else? Sure. Okay. Well, I'd request that you, we'll send out a calendar update
Okay.
So that you have that meeting. I do appreciate the willingness to change. The next item that I have then is the legislative update. I've updated you periodically on the oil impacts, and the North Dakota League of Cities has a schedule, and they're going around the state giving a tour where they are going over legislative updates. That just so happens to be tomorrow at the Astoria at 5:30. I believe I've announced that to the group, and if you are able to attend, I think it would be a good idea. I've also included their report tonight, and there's a couple things that I'd like to specifically point out in the report that they're going to give, just so the public is aware of some of these items. The Army roof became a question at a recent City Commission meeting, and we mentioned that there's a bid limit in regards to requiring an architect and such, and that bid limit was changed by the legislature from $100,000 to $150,000. So any public project now that has $150,000 value, we do have to go out for bids on that project. They also have authorized the implementation of a $25 fee, up to a $25 fee, on anybody that goes through municipal court to pay for the records retention system that Marcy's Law requires. The state put in about $315,000 to pay for the upgrades that were required by Marcy's Law passage, but there's additional fees that they did not. And so they're allowing us to add that. Attorney Kripe and I just talked briefly about that this evening. So we most likely will come to you with a ordinance change in the near future regarding it.
Mr. Kessel, is that in lieu of the requested money?
Yes, yes. You may have at a previous meeting and commission update, they were asking counties and cities to put in a certain amount of dollars. They did not go that route. They instead implemented this system, which allows you to spread that cost to people who plead guilty in municipal court. There's also an insurance commissioner's budget that does allow for funds to be distributed to the fire departments. We do get a portion of that. Chief Sivak is going to present a little later this evening with regards to how we spend those dollars. It's a little less than we anticipated from last year, but the original language would have taken quite a bit more. So at the end of the day, this was probably a win for us. And certainly how we're using it is a win.
Mr. Kessel, that's at 5:30 tomorrow night at the Astoria, right?
Yes, that's correct. And they do want people to pre-register because they do order hors d'oeuvres and things, so they just want a number. Just in lieu of time, I'm just trying to hit some of the high points. TIF and Renaissance zones were also changed so that the participating public entities do have a say in whether or not TIF projects can go through, or at least that they will be affected. We've not done a TIF project in Dickinson, but in other cities they have, and that was a point of contention with some of those other political entities, is they were subject to the city's decision even though it may have impacted them. So the law was changed so that they have input now into the TIF decision-making process, and they changed some rules regarding Renaissance zones to a similar degree. I think that I'll finish there, since that update will happen tomorrow, and hopefully you can all attend. Plus you have the written report, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those as they arise. And then the last item is just a reminder that we've signed a contract with Stark Development for funding. In that contract, they were required to host a joint strategic planning meeting. That meeting has been scheduled for May 22nd between the Stark Development Board and the City Commission. It'll be held at noon at the Retreat Center. And that would conclude my reports, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Kessel? Thank you. We'll move on to public safety. Mr. Fire Chief Sivak.
Good evening, President Decker and Commissioners. I have just a report to give to you this evening and a request to go with that report. I want to start out by talking a little bit of past history. Back in 2009, then new City Administrator Sean Kessel and I had a conversation about our fire fleet and how we could do something to plan for future replacement. We came up with, at that time, an idea of a lease purchase of our equipment, and based on a 5-year cycle, what would that do for us? In 2009, we purchased a new pumper on a 5-year lease purchase. It worked out very well for us. We replaced a pumper that was 33 years old at the time. Now, by ISO standards, a pumper should be replaced every 20 years. But that takes into consideration maintenance and level of use, and so that we're actually getting 10 years beyond the recommended replacement out of our vehicles is a good comment to our maintenance, the city staff maintenance of our equipment, and it was an indication of level of use, which of course has increased dramatically since that time. In 2014, 5 years later, we purchased another piece of equipment on the lease purchase, and this time, though, it was a little bit different. It was an aerial. It was our second ladder truck, and that was driven by the type of growth we saw in the community and the type of 3, 4, 5-story structures and some very high residential structures, and coinciding with the Public Safety Center being located where it was the right piece of equipment to purchase at that time. Because it was an aerial, it added to the cost, and a 5-year lease purchase wasn't going to cover it. That was a 7-year lease. I'm pleased to announce that that 7-year lease was paid off in 3 years. That truck is paid for right now. And one of the reasons for that is something Mr. Kessel alluded to, the insurance premium tax dollars that we started receiving. A couple of legislative sessions ago, I believe it was, they increased the payment to cities, to fire departments, from 50% to 100%, with the caveat that we needed to show specifically what we were using the money for. Statewide, that varies depending on the department, but with Dickinson, we saw that it was a perfect answer to our apparatus replacement situation, and in putting that towards that lease purchase, that's the end result. A 7-year lease paid off in 3 years. So it enables us now to come to you to request that we continue with that same line of thought. We have 2 other vehicles. We have a main engine, a main pumper, engine 503, and our mini pumper that are both overdue to replace. One is 11 years overdue and one is 15 years overdue. So one is 33 years old, one is 37 years old. You see the accompanying pictures of those. And what we would like to do is we would like to ask your permission to bid a new pumper to replace these. We're replacing 2 vehicles with one. We'd be replacing 1,250 gallons per minute of pumping capacity with one truck capable of 1,500 gallons per minute of pumping capacity. So replacing 2 for 1 does not hurt the city of Dickinson, and in fact, it increases what we need to look at in total pumping capacity. The way these things go, if we would be allowed to bid this truck this year, there may be a down payment required at year end that's not in the budget, but could very possibly be covered by the insurance tax money that would be coming in at year end. We would look again at a 5-year lease purchase. That seems to work well for us. It seems to make this plan work. And then it would be, let's see here, about 8 years after that one is paid for before the next one would really be due to replace. So again, tonight we want to bring forward this information to you. I'm not asking for a decision tonight. If you have any questions, I'll take those and we'll try to get answers for you. If you'd like to have, stop down at the station, take a look at the vehicles we're talking about, or ask us more questions about what we're asking you for here, that would be great. If you, as a board tonight, say go ahead and bid it, that would be all right too. That concludes my report and our request of you that at a future commission meeting, the very near future, we'd be asking you to allow us to bid this new truck. Now, from the time it's bid and the bid is awarded, generally these take anywhere from 9 to 12 months to build and deliver. So if we would bid it at the end of this year, you wouldn't see it until the end of next year. Generally, and Mr. Kessel and Linda help me out here, generally that lease wouldn't start until delivery and acceptance of that truck.
Correct.
So that's our request before you. Any questions?
Any questions for Chief Seebach?
Mr. President, Chief,
Yes.
how many miles are on a 1,000-gallon 503?
Offhand, I can't tell you how many miles, but the miles are deceiving because we go by hours more so than mileage. Is the
How many
truck?
hours?
I can't tell you offhand.
Why not?
I didn't think of your asking that question. That's why.
I have no problem with going out and getting bids to replace those 2, because we would have to discuss it in our August budget meeting anyway, so it'd be good to have those numbers if we can get them at that time. That goes without saying that doesn't mean that we're going to approve it.
Right.
But, as you can tell, things are a little slower on the revenue coming in on the tax side. So I have no problem with going out and getting a bid to replace those 2.
Any other comments or questions for Chief Seebach? Mr. Kessel?
Chief, in the past, when we have taken vehicles out of service, they have been provided to other fire companies. Is that accurate? And
Yes.
And do you think that these two pieces would also have service life available in them for another department?
For departments that have less than what these are, or may have nothing at all, absolutely. Not a high dollar, however. Unit 506, old Unit 506, that was replaced with our new pumper, our new aerial that we just paid off, was sold to a mountain resort community in Washington State. They had absolutely nothing, and that helped them quite a bit. The truck before that, which 501 replaced, was sold to Marmarth in North Dakota, which had nothing for a municipal pumper. All they had was brush trucks. So there is some value that's returned to the city, although at that age of apparatus, it might be $5,000, $7,000, somewhere in there is probably what you're looking at. Still, there's something that comes back, however, and it always helps us to feel better about it, quite honestly, when we know that for someone else that doesn't have the good fortune that we have, it's still serving the purpose it was designed for.
And that's actually was my point, Chief, is if I'm not mistaken, I think we sold the vehicle to Marmarth for $1.
Yes, in that case, we did.
Yeah, it
Yeah, I
stays in
thought,
North.
I thought it was a wash
Yeah.
by the time we got done with the maintenance and everything.
It's more about helping out
Right.
Southwest North
And
Dakota.
that's what we see with the trucks that reach that age. To someone else, there's some service life in them. There truly is. What we're discovering is, in 506 was a classic example, and this is one of the things that I shared with City Administrator Kessel. It got to the point where they don't make parts anymore. We needed a valve replaced. We had to have a machine shop actually build the thing. And that's so maybe maybe you could say we're a victim of industry in that respect. But there comes a point in time age-wise where you move it on. You just move on with it. We've been very fortunate. This also, if we're allowed to do this and if we're able to do this, will be the first time in over 15 years that the fire department fleet does not have a piece that's overdue.
Any other comments or questions for Chief? I tend to agree with Commissioner Steiner that I think going out and getting a bid wouldn't be a bad idea for us in the budget, coming into the budget, so.
Yeah, totally understandable, Commissioners, because you asked me, well, where are we going to be at? I could give you a broad range, but that'll help us a lot also. Let's see what the vendors will do for us.
Ms. Haley, do they need a motion to seek that bid?
I think as long as you're clear on that, do you want a motion? I don't know that, We can-
I don't think we need one.
I don't think you need one.
Okay,
But I have your permission then to go ahead and proceed with getting the bids out.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, nothing from police tonight. Moving into engineering, and we're gonna have Assistant City Engineer Marshak present Fisher East Side.
Good evening, President Decker, Commissioners. Bring before you the Fisher East Side Second SID. This item has been tabled from our previous two meetings, April 17th and May 1st. So I hope that I'll be able to answer your questions on this topic this evening. This is a map of 15th and 16th of the location of the streets that we constructed. There was a question about connectivity to Carroll Street, and they both do connect to Carroll Street. So again, this project installed the two remaining streets in Fisher East Side Second. Utilities were already installed, so the SID is only for the street construction for this project. Properties were assessed on a square foot basis at the same rate that was done in 2012. The project assessed the cost of $391,779. However, the actual cost to complete the construction was an additional about $8,000 that the city covered. At the time, it was felt that that was fair to those property owners that the city take on that additional amount. So what the property owners were assessed actually was a reduction. The amounts that were included in your original packets were based on the 5-year term. I don't believe they were included in this packet. This little map just gives a little explanation in between what was previously assessed and what was assessed currently. So the lots that you see that have yellow were the previous assessments. However, the 2 lots in block 3 outlined in blue were only assessed for utilities at that time. And you can't really see the lots in orange. Let's see here. But this lot here and this lot here were only assessed for the street portion of Carroll Street. And then the red hatched areas are what lots are currently under assessment for the street constructions of 15th and 16th Street.
That's just for both sides of 15th and 16th.
Correct.
The 500 and roughly 500,000.
Is what it actually cost the city, but that is not what we assessed. We assessed back 300 and,
Right.
391.
yeah. Do you have any other questions about how this process came about, or?
Any questions for Ms. Marshak? I think you've answered what we had from the questions we had last time,
Okay.
so.
So it then would be, engineering staff would request the approval of the SID for Fisher East Side Second.
And your initial assessment was for a term of 5 years, but we have the option to go,
I believe you have the option to extend the term.
okay. So then I would look for a motion to either approve or deny the special assessment, and for what term, be it 5 or longer. What is the maximum, Mr. Kessel?
You can special assess improvements like this for at least 20 years.
Okay.
The program that we were using at the time did commercial in 5 and residential in 10.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kessel. Again, looking for a motion to either approve or deny the special assessment amounts for Fisher East Side, 2nd Street.
I'd make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Any further discussions or questions for staff?
Are you approving the 5 of the 10 years? Fine.
I'm open, I guess.
Yeah, I have no
Discussion.
problem with the 10-year if that helps in this situation.
I mean, I think it's a considerable amount of money to some of these properties, so I could amend my motion to say we could do it for 10 years. I don't have any problem with that.
So we have a motion,
I'll amend my second.
okay, to assess the amounts over a 10-year period for Fisher East Side 2nd. Any further comments, questions? Ms. Kripe?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
The motion is to approve the special assessment amounts for Fisher East Side 2nd for a term of 10 years. And we have a motion to approve and a second. Okay. No further discussion or questions, we'll vote. Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
We'll move on to, we have some time, traffic signal systems.
This item is consideration to approve a bid for signals at the intersection of State Avenue and Fairway, and also at 30th Avenue West and 21st Street West. We had 2 responsible bidders for this project, opened on May 8th. Edling Electric was the apparent low bidder. I do want to mention as part of this that during the bid opening, I, in error, opened a bid for a 3rd bidder that was not complete. They did not have their contract documents. So by state law, we are unable to accept those bids, or that bid. So we came forward with the 2 responsible bidders. It is at your discretion that we move forward with these up with the low bidder tonight, or you can request that we rebid the project.
Ms.
Uh,
Marshak, how much of a delay are we looking at if we rebid? This is 9% over, if I read correctly.
Right. I would say at least 3 weeks to re-advertise, and then we would have to come back with the bid opening and come to commission to ask for approval.
So about a month.
Yeah, at a minimum. I just want to add in there also that, you know, this intent of this was to move forward quickly so that we could try and get these installed before school started, so that we didn't have this construction going on while school was taking place. And after reviewing all the bids, it did appear that the third bidder that we are not looking at did not meet the qualifications. So if the project was rebid, there's no guarantee that we would be looking at that third bid.
Okay, any questions or comments for Ms. Marshak?
So basically, it's $75,000 to $78,000 over what we estimated,
Let me look.
roughly.
61. I think
yeah.
it's 61, isn't it?
9%.
Yeah, 9%, right.
That's
I
correct.
just went 10. But is it proper to deny both these and go back to both of them and ask them to rebid? Let them know that we aren't satisfied with the 9% over and beyond our estimate? Because that's what I think that we should be doing more of now. Number one, I think a lot of things have changed except the price that we're being charged for some of our work. And so I would have no problem asking them, both of these bidders, to come back with another bid. And I don't think it should take 3 weeks when they have the numbers there that, you know, all their hard work is done.
Commissioner Steiner, I think would take the time is that we have to advertise for the bid, and that's what really puts it
I
out
think it has
there
to be
for
out
a
there
month.
period of time.
It's not necessarily them getting their bid items together.
So what you're saying, we can't go back to them. We need to advertise and let everybody bid it again.
Correct.
I'm still okay with it. I would like to see it rebid.
The only consideration is with the school year starting, that we do have to consider if we're set back a month. But
Ms. Marshak, what would the estimated time of completion be for this project if it was approved today?
You know, I don't have the exact date that we had written in the documents, but I know that the intent was to have everything functional before the start of school. So probably somewhere in July.
And if we, what'll happen is if we delay it and use that same deadline date, chances are the bid will go up.
Correct, yeah. I was gonna say the same thing.
The other thing to mention here is that historically, when we have had other intersections, what's taken time is to get the order in. So whoever gets the contract, there's a delay in time. Compared to other construction materials, it always seems like getting those signals takes time. So that would be another thing that we would be working with.
Mr. President. Mr. Kessel, where would we come up with the 9% extra?
We have a meeting scheduled to go through the capital improvements program. Right now, we're doing almost the same thing that the fire department, you requested of them. We're gathering all the bids, and then we're going to present to you the prioritization and say, here's the dollars, here's where we think we should get it from.
I think we've had a couple projects come in under
We have.
this year.
Right.
Yes.
So
Do
we have some savings.
That was my question. Do we
Yeah.
track that?
Yes.
Do we have a pool that we know?
Yep, we do. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but yes.
And I know these are long overdue, these intersections. There's probably a couple more we can talk about too.
They aren't that long overdue. They only been there a year. But, I mean, if we gotta do it, we gotta do it, you know, it's just at a certain point in time, I'm getting tired of the tail wagging the dog in these situations, and, we're forgetting who the owners are and who the customer is and so on, and, you know, we're bound by a time restraint here, but, so I think we should probably just go ahead and get it done on this time and just, you know, for future references, let's just keep that in mind that, you know, this isn't 3-4 years ago where, you know, things are pretty flush.
So what I gather is you have a motion to approve?
I would make the motion to move to accept the low bid for Eileen Electric.
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion or questions for staff? Hearing none, will vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to the 5 o'clock timetable. Downtown Dickinson Association presentation. C. Schwartz.
Good evening, President Decker, City Commissioners. My name is Christy Schwartz. I'm the President of the Board for the Downtown Dickinson Association. Thank you so much for your time on this evening's agenda. At the regular meeting of the Dickinson City Commission on February 21st of this year, Commissioner Carson Steiner brought up funding for the Downtown Association with $200,000 from the balance in the occupancy tax fund. Throughout the discussion in that commission meeting, Commissioners Friedrich, Jennings, Oltmans supported the need for the support to the Downtown Association. But they were opposed to taking those funds out of the occupancy tax. Commissioner Jennings suggested that the hospitality tax would seem more appropriate for supporting the Downtown Dickinson Association. So I am here today to follow up on that discussion. The Downtown Dickinson Association would propose to President Decker and Commissioners Friedrich, Steiner, Oltmans, and Jennings that the City of Dickinson support the DDA with $100,000 from the hospitality tax fund. Those funds would be used for two purposes. $40,000 restricted specifically to start the process of marketing, public input, and fundraising for the town square, and $60,000 in seed money for the association to hire an executive director to help facilitate activities that further the construction of the town square. It is also our intent to initiate a business improvement district, or BID, for the downtown Dickinson area that will help continue our efforts well into the future, and to initiate a major fundraising campaign immediately following the public input meetings and updated drawings reflecting that input from those public meetings. I've given you all a picture of the drawing of the town square that was, the city had paid to have the planning done for the downtown, and I did that because I wasn't sure if the new commissioners had seen those pictures. There is a complete plan that's available out of Sean's office. So I would just open it up if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mrs. Schwartz?
Ms. Schwartz, the $60,000 to hire an executive director, so to speak, one of his primary jobs would be for the fundraising to continue for his position for the next year.
Yes,
Correct,
it would
correct?
be, yes.
Okay, so at this point in time, you aren't coming back to ask for another $100,000 next year?
No,
You're looking for $100,000 this year?
no,
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
no,
that.
I understand,
That-
absolutely.
That is his job, and that's why you're hiring him. You need the seed money to get him going to make some money.
Correct.
What do you anticipate I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that, yeah, the pictures that you have in front of you, we've paid pretty good money for this already. I think we got about 50 or up to 100,000 with everything that we've done with this architect. So that doesn't mean that this is where it's gonna sit or whatever, but it just gives you an idea of the place where we're looking at and a lot of things that could happen in that downtown plaza. I think that, we probably missed the stars being aligned a couple years ago, but I don't think it's too late to do this here. I guess it's never too late to start on something, and you gotta have something to shoot for. I think this is a good start. I think we got a good crew that's ready to go after it, and I would urge my fellow commissioners to vote yes on this.
Just as a point of reference also, the prior city commission had supported the Downtown Association to help fundraise $2.5 million towards this project, which would be the next step after the architecture drawing updates with the public input and such. And once we get to certain points in that process, then the city would then start helping with the funding to build that.
Mr. Kessler, do you remember what our commitment was?
As Ms. Schwartz has mentioned, our commitment was to build the downtown square.
Okay.
We never went to bid. We did visit other communities to look at theirs. We do have their amounts that they paid. We were estimating the cost of construction to be between 7 and 9 million, which would be reduced then by the fundraising efforts that the downtown was going to make. So the cost of the city would be between 5 and 7 million, and that's for what appears before you.
And our further funding was contingent on them raising the 2.5 million.
That's correct, Commissioner Olmans. That's the first step. Yep. And Ms. Schwartz and I have had that conversation multiple times.
Yes, we do understand that.
Yeah.
So the commitment that you're asking for today is to get everything rolling, to hire a person and get them in place to start fundraising process for the 2.5 billion. It's not your intention to come back and ask for more until you've reached that 2.5 million level, and then that's.
That is correct, Commissioner Oltmans, yes. And through our process of the bid, the Business Improvement District, that will be a portion of our funding as well.
Okay. All right.
Ms. Carlson, do we have the current balance of the hospitality tax fund?
It's projected at the end of 2017 to be $500,000 after all commitments are paid.
Yep, he's correct.
And did we make a decision on the veterans facility?
Yes, you did designate that was going to come out of the sales tax rather than
Okay.
hospitality tax, so that wouldn't impact funding for this project.
Well, I still stand by my comments made on February 21st, and I think with the intention of this project, this is certainly the fund that would receive the most benefit if we're successful in this project.
Yeah, I agree. And the success is definitely resting on your shoulders, and that's the type of funding that I like to provide is when we give the seed money, but it is your organization's responsibility to really deliver and bring it to fruition, and so I commend you on that.
Thank you.
I agree. So I would look then for a motion to,
I would make a motion to approve the $100,000 request, 40,000 of that to start the fundraising process for the associate director and get the ball rolling for the downtown association.
Second.
any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion. Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank
You
you.
have your money. Go do good things. All right. Well, we're about a minute early, but Mr. Berg?
Good evening, President Decker and Commissioners. My name is Scott Schneider with Apex Engineering Group here in our Dickinson office. Mr. Zaroff asked us to give an update on the wastewater infrastructure Primarily for the two new commissioners that are on this board, just a little background and how we got to where we're at today with the infrastructure. Along with me today is my colleague Mike Berg from our Bismarck office. Mike was very involved in the planning, design, and construction of the collection system, water reclamation facility. So Mike's going to walk through a little background for the commission and some things about some reuse water today for the commissions.
Thank you. I'll go through some background and then get into the water reclamation facility, wastewater collection system, and then reuse. Stepping back to 2011, the existing wastewater treatment facility was at its capacity. We were starting to plan upcoming improvements. At that point, there was a lot of new activity and a lot of projections all over the map, really, on what population growth would look like. We started off with a planning meeting here in the back of this room where we assembled all the available planning documents. And ultimately, we landed on a wastewater treatment facility to serve 35,000 people, but also a facility that was easily expanded for greater population and also flexible, because the one thing we knew at that time was that you really can't predict oil activity or energy activity. So it needed to be a facility that can handle greater than expected population and also less. The wastewater treatment facility also needs to be very technically advanced. So the standard for wastewater treatment is that you can't materially alter the quality of the water in the receiving stream. So the city of Dickinson discharges to the Hart River, and that's a pretty tough standard because in the summer, you can get across the Hart River without getting your feet wet. So it ended up being a sophisticated technology. It was designed and built in phases. The buildings are sized for full build out. And what that means is we might have a room for a couple more operators in the admin building. A pump building might have room for 1 or 2 more pumps. Tanks we sized for 35,000 people. The next threshold will be when the city reaches 52,000 people. We'll construct 3 additional tanks. And finally, full build out will be 3 more tanks for 70,000 people. The project bid in 2012. Substantial completion was in October of 2014. The price was about $30 million, and change orders amounted to about 1/2%. Cost per treated gallon of $8.25, which is really outstanding in our industry. A wastewater collection system, excuse me. This figure shows the expected expansion of the city back in 2012. Light green areas were areas that were expected to develop in 1 to 3 years. Dark green areas that were expected to develop in 4 to 5 years. And then the yellow areas were 5 years and beyond. The existing collection system at that time, a major trunk sewer that conveys wastewater from downtown Dickinson to the lagoons. And then we have conveyance along Broadway and Villard, and also down 10th Avenue East. Step 1 was evaluating the capacity of the existing system. Flow meters were deployed in the city's collection system, and this is the kind of data we get from a flow meter. So this graph here is a 24-hour period. The small lines are typical weekdays. The black line is an average of 5 weekdays. So if we look at this graph, the left side is midnight. Flows in the city are gradually dropping down. They decline till about 4 or 5 in the morning. About 6 o'clock in the morning, people are getting up, getting ready for work. Flows increase till about 8, 9 o'clock, and then they stabilize through most of the day. This particular flow meter was for Basin B, which covers downtown Dickinson and extends all the way up to the university. This graph is also Basin B during a rain event. The rain event, rain event happens about noon. We have our average day where flows come up and peak about 9 o'clock and then hold constant. The green line is the flows on that rain event day. So our peak flows in our industry are when rain events happen. Water enters the pipes through defects in manholes, maybe sump pumps. In old parts of town, it'll be roof drains, maybe storm drains that are cross-connected to the sewer system. This particular rain event was about a 5-year rain event, and the flows increased from about 300 gallons a minute up to almost 1,300 gallons a minute. So the red line is the extra water that was experienced on that day. So that rain event brought in an additional almost 1,000 GPM into that system. That's quite a bit, but that's also pretty typical for an old downtown. The next step from this rain data, we plot the rain data in the INI, and really what we're looking for is what's the capacity of your system during a 10-year rain event. We look for that in all the different basins of the city. And then in the collection system, there wasn't a lot of remaining capacity, which is really what you would expect, because back when most of this system was designed in the last oil boom, late 70s, early 80s, they were planning for a population of about 20,000. The next step is to plan how to get these expansion areas to the wastewater treatment facility. In general, the preferred alternative was to divert some of the flow from north of Interstate west and then bring it down the West Business Loop, and from there pump over east to the water reclamation facility. This freed up capacity in the 10th Avenue East Interceptor so that we could accommodate future development to the northeast. This preferred alternative translates into an improvement map. This map is a map of the improvements. Solid lines are gravity sewers. Dashed lines are pumped force mains. Recent improvements are highlighted in yellow. Remaining improvements include a gravity sewer in South Dickinson, and then 2 projects that really deal with the heart of the city. Most of the recent improvements dealt with the periphery to accommodate future growth. These 2 projects, Lift Station 1 and the Sim Street gravity sewer, will really deal with the heart of the system. Finally, water reuse. So going back to our map of the Hart River, one unique feature for the city of Dickinson is that Dickinson doesn't get its water from the Hart River watershed. So most water permits, when you withdraw water from a body of water, you have to discharge that water back to the same watershed. Since Dickinson is already receiving its water from across watershed boundaries, that water is yours to use to extinction. You can do what you like with it. So, reuse water is a big issue today, and it'll be a big issue in the future. Currently, reuse water from the water reclamation facility is pumped west about 9 miles to the Dakota Prairie Refinery. This reuse water, if you held a glass of it in your hand and compared it to a glass of drinking water, it'd be really hard to tell the difference. It's that clean. From the water reclamation facility, there's been a few water sales that have been set up just north of the refinery, where it's been hauled out by truck. And then last fall and this year, the water sale has been conveying the water west to Belfield. And that's the water sale that's currently going on. This reuse water can be used however the city sees fit, and could be industrial activity currently, could be agricultural activity in the future. The reuse water is conveyed with a reuse water booster station located at the water reclamation facility. This station just received an American Council of Engineering Companies Award for Project of the Year in its category. And I'll say here, I guess, what I said at the banquet. This award isn't because of this booster station. There's lots of booster stations around that are similar to this. This award really is the City of Dickinson's award for the city's vision for reuse water and commitment to this infrastructure. The city has developed a water resource that will be here forever. And this is an area that doesn't have a lot of water resources. So we appreciate the City of Dickinson giving us the opportunity to work on this important project. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Any questions for Mr. Berg? Any?
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Kessel?
I do have a couple. Thank you, Mr. Berg. You and your firm has done a really nice job as a partner in all of these improvements, and I just want to thank you for being that partner. I do want to point out a couple things that you said, just for emphasis. The first one was back on one of your earlier slides. You mentioned the nature, the expandability of the project itself at the wastewater treatment plant, and we will be able to utilize that facility with improvements to a population of around 70,000. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
And I believe you also said that in doing so, the amount of staff that we would have to add over the course of that time would be about 2 or 3. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm not clear on the amount of staff. That's, I'd have to check to get an accurate answer. I believe that's in the ballpark.
Mr. Berg, I think that's correct.
Okay.
The expanded, the projected staffing, I believe, was about 6 to 7 max, and right now we're at 4.
Okay.
I just want to point out that efficiency. That's important. And I also wanted to mention that we do have a current contract not only for reuse in the oil industry, which, by the way, I think we've topped 100 million in sales already.
I would like to give an update on that.
Okay.
For May, we currently reuse water delivered for May is 26,316,000. Total reuse water delivered for 2017 is 94,985,000 gallons. And that first 100 million gallons is at price break of $7.50, and then after that it goes to $5.25 a thousand.
And I also believe we have an existing contract with a farmer to water fields. Is that not accurate?
We do have for some excess water out of the stored area of the lagoons, and of course you can't forget the contract with the Dakota Prairie Refinery up to 200 GPM.
How much remaining capacity do we have? How many more gallons could we provide on a daily basis?
But I guess right at this point in time, we have maximized, I guess would be a good word, our ability at a reuse pump station. On the line between the water reclamation facility and Dakota Prairie Refinery has a max capacity of 2,100 GPM, and we are maximizing that currently with the fracking from MBI. So right now we are maximizing that capacity of that pipeline, which is over what we bring in daily, but we have used our cell number 4 as a storage to supplement that. So right now we're selling more than coming in, but we have the storage for it, and we're maximizing our capacity of our reuse line.
And just to quantify that for you, when we anticipated the sales this year, we began storing it in cell 4. Cell 4 has gone down 2 feet so far, and I believe we have 11 feet left, if I'm not mistaken. So we made the projections. We should be able to provide all of the water that could be anticipated from the project.
But I do want to appreciate Apex and Mr. Berg, because it was, we'd never done that, maximize the amount going through that reuse line, but with a lot of ingenuity and help with control systems, using our cell number 4 as an additional storage, using existing pumps, laying some fiber and additional lay flat pipe. We have done it, and I think about a month ago, we learned that everything works, you know, and that was a big achievement.
It's good to hear. Any other questions, comments for Mr. Berg? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a little bit of time before our next timetable. And we'll go to Mr. Zuroff, Public Works, GT Architects Agreement.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker and President Decker and Commission members. This is the agreement with GT Architecture. This is a standard form agreement for construction bidding and construction administration for roof replacement and repairs at the Dickinson Armory. The project construction costs are estimated at $205,000, almost $206,000, and compensation to the architect with this agreement is $16,375. Public Works recommends the approval.
Any questions for Mr. Zuroff on this project? Guess then I would look for a motion to either approve or deny.
Move to approve contract.
Second.
Motion to approve and a second. Any other discussion, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Got about 4 minutes. And what's next is I have a Public Works Week proclamation. So I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. The City of Dickinson, North Dakota proclamation. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewer, streets, and highways, public buildings, and solid waste collection. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services. And whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, are vitally dependent upon the efforts and skills of public works officials. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff Public Works Department is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. Now, therefore, I, Scott Decker, President of the Dickinson City Commission, do hereby proclaim May 21st through the 27th of 2017 as National Public Works Week in the City of Dickinson, and I call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions which public works staff make every day in our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. In witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause this seal to be affixed. And I would look for a motion to approve this proclamation.
So moved.
Second.
We'll go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Please hand that to Mr. Kessel.
Commissioner Decker, thank you. After the timetables, I'll give a update on our public works activities. Thank you very much.
All right. Let's see. Well, we're about 2 minutes early, but I think they're ready to go. Dr. Pitts?
Good evening, President Decker, members of the City Commission. My name is Bruce Pitts. I chair the board of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library Foundation. I thank you for this opportunity to give you an update on where we are with particular reference to the Elkhorn Cabin. And I will end with a request for you to consider. Allow me to make a few introductions before we start. These are the folks who are building the Elkhorn. We have Joannis Leminski from Mortensen, who's our program director. We have Richard Bickle from Skull Construction and Michael Jangula from Skull Construction, who are prepared to answer any of the technical questions you might have. We have Rob Remark and Zach Mathern from JLG Architects. JLG is the architect for the Elkhorn, but also the architect of record for our project as a whole. And we have Shanna Schervheim, who is our public relations person regionally and the Jane of all trades. for the project, so thank you for being here. Let's see, there we go. That number is the number of people who visited the Theodore Roosevelt National Park last year. And of those, we figure about 10% spend time, I'm sorry, about 10,000 spend time, considerable time in Dickinson. And our goal is to obviously make a big change in the number of people who come to Dickinson in tandem with their visits to the National Park. We will be co-marketing with the National Park as the Theodore Roosevelt National Park and Presidential Library. Today I'm going to thank you, and thank you in particular for the great support you've shown for this progress already with your $3 million matching grant. I'll bring you up to speed with where we are, some of the challenges that we face, and where we're going from here. Current state, unlike the last time I was here, we have a team. We have people on the ground in Dickinson. We have a strong board of directors. We have core staff. We have retained Turmoil, Watkins, and Brandt from Chicago to conduct our national capital campaign. They have been hard at work now for about 6 months, and they already have my calendar scheduled with visits to potential donors everywhere from Phoenix to San Francisco to New York. The public relations firm is Fulger & Mortine. They are the folks that did the Josh Duhamel campaign in North Dakota. We will sign the contract with them this weekend. One of the things that has been lacking in our project is getting the word out, both locally and nationally. We haven't had the funds to do that, but we have been able to secure those funds now. I already introduced our program and construction management teams at Mortenson, and our architects are JLG. We are in the phase right now, from a design perspective, of figuring out the TR story that we're going to tell and how we're going to tell it in the museum portion of the Presidential Library. It's hard to build a building until you know what you're going to do in it. And this is an essential component of design work that JLG is helping drive. We're also a presidential papers project. This is the origin of this, the digitization project of Roosevelt's papers being done by the Theodore Roosevelt Center at DSU. That is why this is happening, and that project continues to gain international notoriety. We're also taking into consideration, strong consideration, how can this whole facility be a benefit to the community? How are the people of Dickinson going to use this facility? What would they like us to do that will enhance the quality of life in this community? We've so far had 7 or 8 community forums to address that question, and we will continue to do that until nobody shows up. From a fundraising perspective, Governor Burgum has been enormously helpful. This week, he approached the 2 people who I can't really name right now, who we are asking to be the co-chairs of our national campaign. These are household names. He also is helping us approach other donors that we have identified that he knows. We have had substantial in-kind pledges by local and regional builders. Our current goals are to secure $45 million in contributions for construction and exhibits, and over time, $40 million for endowment. That will help ensure the long-term financial viability of the project. Design is important. What this looks like is important to donors, not only because they want to feel pride in it, in its beauty and what it represents. They want naming opportunities, and some of them really want to be involved in the design. Some of them just like certain architects and will contribute to anything that a certain architect is doing. The Elkhorn is the first and most important exhibit of the Presidential Library. We will start construction of the shell and roof this summer. I'll go through the cost of that. And then the following summer, when the site plan is better known, site it on its permanent site, and then finish out the inside and the construction in the summer of 2018. This is the overall cost of the facility, and you'll notice that it costs a good deal more than an 1,800 square foot house. That's because this is an exhibit. It's not a house. We are meeting a lot of codes that homes don't have to: fire suppression, ADA, other building codes. Also, as an exhibit, it carries extra costs that make it appealing to people to visit. and draw people into the community to visit. And we're prepared to answer questions about some of those things later. But the overall cost is $760,000. We project the expenditure to go on this time frame. This summer, we will begin the walls and roof. And then the following summer, we'll be in a position to site the permanent foundation, move the building onto it, and complete the cabin. We've all just been through a legislative session. I know it's impacted you. It's impacted us as well. It came with us with certain blessings. One, we are now engaged with the entire legislature and the governor. They all know about this. They're all in on it. And they don't all support it, but the governor certainly does. And the legislature did carry through all of the unspent portion of its original appropriation going into the next biennium. That was $11.25 million. They offered to let us use $750,000 for unrestricted use and $10.5 million for construction. The challenges that were attached to that is that we can't use the state appropriation or the city match to build the Elkhorn. It had been our intent to do that, to use the state and city money this summer to begin constructing the Elkhorn, because you know how important that is for the community, and frankly, it's very important for our project. It's very important for our fundraising as well. We will begin, the legislation also requires that we demonstrate significant construction activity on the building itself, on the main presidential library, by December 31st of 2018. We will break ground on that structure by October 1st of 2018. And there are also questions about funding for vertical construction versus horizontal construction, but I think that is not going to wind up to be much of an issue. So our plans were thrown a bit of a curve with the latest appropriations from the state, but we will work with them. In the short term, our challenge is to fund the Elkhorn. We have some contributions specifically earmarked for the Elkhorn, but certainly not in the range that we need. We are kicking off our PR and fundraising campaigns. You'll see a lot more about the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library in the press, and you'll see a lot more announcements of gifts. They're already coming in. We're accelerating design and construction to meet with our legislated deadline, and we're both hiring an executive director and expanding the board with greater capacity. In the long term, phasing this is going to be a phased project. We're going to start with phase 1 is the Elkhorn. Phase 2 is whatever we're able to afford and do in the first or the second round of construction having to do with the presidential library itself, and then expand from there. And coordinating construction with donor contributions is always an issue. Next step, we have to rethink the Elkhorn funding. The board is meeting on May 17th through 20th, and a number of important decisions we made there about how we're going to proceed. We are going to hire someone to serve as a chief operating officer or executive director, at least in the interim. Having an actual executive director of a library of this stature is something we probably can't really hope to accomplish until this is built. But we need somebody with the appropriate skills to drive the project. We're kicking off the national fundraising campaign and the national public relations campaign. The things that I would like to end with are, number one, thank you again for the enormous support you have shown for this project. Without the city's support, we wouldn't be where we are, and frankly, the outside world wouldn't pay us much attention. Secondly, I know there have been conversations about further state funding attached either to further state appropriations or our own fundraising success. I think that is something I would love to talk about later, but I don't think it's appropriate necessarily to talk about it now. Third, and this gets into what I would very much like to propose for your consideration, we need to accelerate the fundraising for the Elkhorn if we're going to comply with the summer time schedule. If in any way at all the city could see its way clear to provide either an outright or a matching grant of $300,000 that would carry us over the next year or two so that we're able to match for every dollar we raise for the Elkhorn with some city money, that would be an incentive for donors and it would certainly secure our efforts to stay on our construction schedule for the Elkhorn, because all these people expect us to stick with that schedule. Thank you very much. Those are my prepared comments, and we're open for any questions.
Any
Mr.
questions
President.
for Dr. Pitts?
So to sum it up, we made a commitment of $3 million.
Mhm.
And last year or the year before, we released 10%, $300,000.
That's right, $300,000.
Okay. And you're asking for another $300,000 from us if we stipulate that it can be a match, dollar for dollar, which would give you $600,000 and so on.
That's right.
Okay.
The caveat is that 300 cannot come from this initial 3 million that because that's what the legislature put on us. So this is a 300,000 separate from that 3 million, and the 5 million that we pledge at a later date, according to state matching funds, if I'm correct, Mr. Kessel.
Yeah, our current resolution that was passed several years ago says that the original 3 million was intended to meet the local match requirement that the state required at that time. So we met that one fatal swoop, and the resolution continues to say that we will provide up to $5 million if there is a further significant investment by the state of North Dakota. So there was no definition as to what significant means. That was allowed to be determined by essentially the commission at the time. So our current commitment is $8 million, while $3 million plus a pledge of $5 million. And as has been said, we've already provided $300,000, 10% of our commitment to the organization.
And so we're saying that the next 300,000, we can't take it out of the balance of 2.7.
Correct. That is brand new. That is legislation that just passed this session. That was not a requirement that was on it until then.
Didn't we see where they didn't want us to use that money to build?
They initially wanted all of the state money to be used for construction only. That is still the case, except for $750,000 they freed up for unrestricted
But
use.
why would the state put a limitation on ours as a city
It's a really good
for the
question.
300,000? They didn't have enough to worry about down there.
I guess not.
To get into
You'd have to ask them. I really don't know, but it's the reality where it came as a big surprise to us too. Yeah.
So, we'd have to look at some fund balances and,
We'd also have to look at our other pledge of 5 million if we need to restructure that.
we're gonna have to look at the whole
Right.
pledge.
Right.
If there's a way to restructure the old pledge and keep 300 out of it.
Well, right now, I mean, the state has dictated that 3 million or 2.7 that is remaining cannot be touched towards the Elkhorn. That is decreed.
They
from
said
on-
for exhibits.
Right.
That was the line.
I would have liked to have done the Elkhorn ourselves with the city of Dickinson do the Elkhorn. We'd have $1 million building, at least we'd have a building that would start, but that puts the kibosh on all of that.
Commissioner Steiner, that was our plan prior to this session's conclusion.
We had a good plan.
Yeah, it was.
So, what we need to look at, and I guess we'll have staff look at, what time frame are you looking at, Dr. Pitts?
Obviously, the sooner the better, because
Okay.
summer is upon us.
Right.
I don't have much insight into your time
Yeah.
constraints.
I get the general feeling that we are in support of this, but we need to find the appropriate funding mechanisms and possibly even look at our resolution from, if that needs to be adjusted, that we can use that out of that 5 million or restructure that to work on this.
Commissioner Decker, if I may, I've put some thought to this process. And you also have to remember that at the time of that commitment, we were at the height of the boom. Our collections and our sales tax were probably at their peak, and we've dropped about 50%. So we're in a much different funding scenario than we are today. But I would suggest that we can come back with a new resolution for you at the next city commission meeting. I believe that our pattern should be something on the order of honor our $3 million commitment. If we don't, this project essentially fails because that time frame has passed for a local commitment. So I think we have to honor that $3 million. I think we changed the the 5 million to a $300,000 dollar for dollar match. We can provide $50,000 as early as June to match the funds that you already have in your balance, and then provide another additional check for whatever is raised beyond that in August. And I think that meets your time frame commitments that you had up on the board. And then I really believe that it's going to be up to the commission to make additional pledges or donations as you see fit based upon their ability to raise dollars. I do have a sales tax fund budget that I can share with you that does allow us to honor the $5 million commitment if you choose to, but it would take some time. It would take probably until 2026 before we can do that. So my recommendation would be you bite that off or make that commitment later based upon the needs at the time and our economic conditions and such. So I can make a resolution, present it to you next commission meeting with something of that variety. Is that what you're looking for?
I think that would work.
Okay.
That would be greatly appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Pitts, just another quick question. In your fundraising, obviously it all can't come from Dickinson or from the state.
Of course not.
Do you have any major contributor out there that is ready to step forward? I mean, that would be the best news for everybody, give everybody a
First of all, people in this community are stepping up, some unexpected, and coming forward. Our goal for the state as a whole is $10 million on an $85 million campaign.
Right.
We have contacted people who either have connections to this area or are devoted TED heads, people who are all about Theodore Roosevelt or some aspect of his legacy. And I'll be meeting with them over the course of the next couple of months. And the success of those encounters, I think, will drive how much we're able to bite off with phase 2 of our project, what we break ground on in October. I look forward to coming back to you with those reports. I'm sure I'll have some stories to tell. But our fundraising firm is optimistic. This is non-traditional. Most hospitals, colleges have a donor base. They have a history. They have a legacy. We're a startup. We didn't have staff the last time we met, and we have no established donor base. So this campaign is different. We're going to individuals who we think might have a personal stake in something like this around the nation.
Is there the Roosevelt family that you're?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we're in Kermit Roosevelt III, who is a great-something grandson, and is a 40-year-old constitutional law professor at the University of Pennsylvania, has joined our board. We are working with the Theodore Roosevelt Association on a communication with the entire family, and the outcome of the legislative session was the thing holding that up. The person managing that wanted to make sure that our funding was continued before sharing that information, and that will now go out. And we're approaching another prominent Roosevelt to be one of our campaign co-chairs. So yeah, the family's involved.
Thank you.
Like my family, they don't all speak with one voice. So,
Thank you.
Any further questions?
President Decker, one more. Dr. Pitts, could you clarify that comment you made about $10 million? That's in addition to the commitment North Dakota has already made
that's right.
From a state and city.
That's right. An additional $10 million from private sources, non-public sources. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we have another timetable at 5:45 here. Ran a little long. Southwest Water Contract, Mr. Kessel.
Thank you, President Decker. This agreement has been under review and negotiation for quite some time. And I just wanted to go over and give kind of some conceptual comments about the agreement. Southwest Water essentially owns all of the customer base in their service area, and that service base goes well beyond the city of Dickinson and Stark County. And this contract is really all about trying to define what happens, provide an orderly transfer when those current Southwest customers become City of Dickinson customers instead. This is commonplace in the utility industry. MDU and Rough Rider go through similar agreements and discussions all the time. But this is really about expansions, whether that's through annexation or extending infrastructure to areas that have already been annexed but don't have infrastructure. And there's a lot of points of negotiation that were reviewed. So they're going to go over how that transition is proposed in the document, the compensation that is also proposed. And I'll have a couple more comments, I think, at the conclusion of the presentation this evening. But they've been great to work with. I know they've been frustrated at times because the process has taken quite some time, but we're glad to be here today.
Thank you, President Decker and City Commission. My name is Jack Dwyer. I serve as legal counsel for Southwest Water, and this is CEO Sandy Berwick.
CFO.
Excuse me, CFO Sandy Berwick. Our manager, CEO, is here with us, Mary Massad, and the chairperson of our board, Larry Bars, is also here in attendance. So I assume you would like me to take you through the agreement and give you some kind of the outline of the deal. We only have a few copies, so maybe a couple of you will have to share. Okay. So while we're waiting, I'll keep going. What the agreement sets out to do is, number one, set forth a boundary which designates city service area versus Southwest Pipeline Project's service area. What we're proposing is that the line that delineates those two areas is consistent with the January 2016 city limit boundaries of the city of Dickinson. The other thing that the agreement sets forth is compensation for the State Water Commission and Southwest Water when the city serves the Southwest Pipeline Project's customers or service area. If you look through the agreement, and I'm not sure if you have it in front of you or you've labored through it, there's two types of customers that are identified in that agreement. The first type of customer is a future customer, and that is a customer who has never been served or is not under contract with Southwest Water. So that would be new construction or customers who are using well service. So the only time the city of Dickinson would compensate Southwest Water Authority for future customers is if you serve a customer outside of your current service area. So any customer that you serve within your service area, no compensation is due. The current amount for compensation when a future customer is served by the city outside of your current service area is 1,067. And the formula, or how we got to that number, is by taking a look at the difference in revenue Southwest Water Authority would receive over a 5-year period serving customers directly versus serving or selling water to the city, and in bulk. So that's how we came up with that number. The other type of customer is a direct customer, and that is a customer who is under contract with Southwest Water. We're currently providing them water. We have lines run to their house or business, meter pits. So a direct customer, anytime the city takes over that customer and disconnects Southwest Water as the retail water provider for that customer, another compensation would be due at that time. So because we'd have a greater expectancy with a direct customer, there are two amounts that would be due when the city takes over a direct customer. To the authority, the amount currently is $2,366, and to the State Water Commission would be another $1,800.61. So the formulas, how we came up with those numbers is for the authority, there would be a difference in revenue over a period of 10 years. That's a projected difference. It's a one-time payment, just like the future customers. And for the State Water Commission, it's the difference that they would receive over a period of 5 years in their capital repayment. So in both instances, it's set up so that compensation is not due to the authority or the State Water Commission until 6 months after service is provided by the city to the customer. So, I guess to talk about what's in it for the city, Southwest Pipeline Project provides great quality water for Southwest North Dakota. We've got a big staff, a great staff, and we're down in Bismarck every session trying to increase capacity, make upgrades, which benefits the city. The purpose of this agreement is to stabilize water rates for all of our customers, and specifically the retail customers. During the years of growth and the boom, the retail customers suffered from some increases in their water rates. So, this agreement intends on stabilizing those water rates and keeping them down for the future. One of the benefits for the city is that the city gets to control its growth. With this agreement that we've, I guess, amended over time, the current version gives the city the ability to decide what it wants to serve and what it doesn't want to serve. So any customer who seeks Southwest Pipeline Project service within a certain area or certain distance of the city limits would be required to provide evidence that the city of Dickinson has approved Southwest service. Anytime that the Southwest Pipeline Project does not have capacity to serve a customer, the agreement protects the city and doesn't require the city to compensate the authority or the commission. We've also set this up in a pay-as-you-go format. If you don't take over any of our customers, If you don't serve customers outside of your service area, no compensation is due to the authority or the commission. You know, lastly, this agreement will hopefully promote efficiency, and each political subdivision can identify the areas that it wants to serve. So if the city of Dickinson has an area that it sees growth in the future, it can serve that area, and we won't be running lines in that direction. So at that point, I guess I'd open it up for any questions.
Mr. Dwyer, or I guess Ms. Berwick, how did you come to the 4% on the price index?
The 4% was based on the increase in water rates, and I might direct that question to Mary Massett, but.
Mostly it's, our rates have increased probably by 8% in the last few years. Each year it goes up 8%. Our expenses in the last 5 years have increased about 90%. So the 4% CPI is very fair.
Thank you.
Mr. President, so to date, you're talking 8 customers that have been disconnected from the project. And you're looking for the city within 60 days to pay $2,366 per customer?
Yes.
Once we sign this contract, so 8 to 2,300, you know, 16, 18,000, whatever it comes up to be. And then for future customer that wants to, we're gonna write another check to you for $1,067. Okay. And then the $1,800.61, what is that for again?
That, I think that's for the, my understanding is for the improvements, right? The capital expenditure.
Yeah, the capital repayment that we would pay the State Water Commission.
So then that'd be another $1,800 for those 8 customers that have already come off.
Yes.
So once we sign this, we're looking at another $50,000 expenditure.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay.
And then in the future, it's, you know, you could pass that on to the developer, the cost.
It has to be, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I just want to understand that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Where were these 8 located?
Those are located in lands that we've annexed. Some of them were on the north side of Dickinson.
Okay.
And just to, if I may,
Any other questions from commissioners, comments?
I guess just for a little background, so there was an agreement, there was not an agreement in place before.
correct.
So now they're just looking for compensation for their lost customer base, basically.
And Ms. Jennings, this is not only the city of Dickinson, they're looking for all cities within their service area to do a similar agreement.
And on that note, we have 27 cities who have signed this agreement already. We serve 33, so there would be only 6 cities left, and you are one of those cities.
I'm glad to hear we're not last.
I hope you're not last. And then the compensation that we're looking for, just to remind you, is the difference in revenue between what we would get from that rural customer compared to what we get from the city.
Any other commissioners have any comments or questions? I have one other, but I'll defer to Mr. Kessel. You had some comments?
I do, and I think it's important that, that you address the question of, we've gone this long without it, why do we need it now? And maybe you did when I was absent, and if you did, just tell me to be quiet. But it's kind of to Mrs. Jennings' point about, you've been in existence as an authority, and this project's been around for a great many years. Why do we need a project, or why do we need an agreement today? And you talked about efficiency, I guess, but.
Yeah, Mr. Kessel, if I can try to answer the question. So, under state law and federal law, the Southwest Pipeline Project, because we did have debt to the federal government and we have an obligation to the state of North Dakota, our service area is protected. So, and that goes back, 15 years. But because no growth or not significant growth was occurring, it wasn't an issue for us. We started looking at this probably 6 years ago, when cities were growing. And so in order to promote efficiency and to protect our rural rates, we've started trying to enforce our rights under the law and protect our service area.
And Mr. Dwyer, isn't there a specific federal statute that gives you the authority? In our discussions, you've mentioned it in the past. I guess that's where I was trying to go.
Right, 1926B.
There it is.
Is a federal statute. It's we are also protected under North Dakota Century Code 6-09.4-22, which is in the agreement that was presented to you.
And those statutes allow you to go retro instead of from this point forward, as far as the 8 customers that were affected that prompted you to come before us, that allows you to come in and collect on those past ones and not us sign a contract that from this date forward does that?
Well, Commissioner Oltmans, respectfully, I guess that would be a good question for your own lawyer. My personal opinion is that we would have some protections. We'd probably have a right to seek an injunction and prevent you from serving those customers. But we don't want to go down that path. We're just trying to reach an amicable an agreement that is hopefully good for both parties.
Mr. President, I guess my one question would be, we've had a lot of discussion about de-annexing property. So would this kind of agreement work in both ways if our previous customers went back to Southwest Water?
That's a very good question, and we don't have any sort of provision for taking over your customers. I guess we haven't thought about that.
If I may, I have given at least some thought to that. In the customers that we have taken over, in some cases we are providing them water, in some cases we're not. So we do have the scenario where we do annex land, but we're not triggered to make a payment until that service actually happens. So we have some time in the case of villages, for instance, Sundance villages, where even though we've annexed the land, the payment isn't due until service is provided. So as long as de-annexation happened before service was provided, we don't have an issue. If services are provided, though, that's another story.
If I may add to Mr. Kessel's comment, annexation isn't any trigger in our agreement. It's just based on service.
But aren't we required to pay for any future customers, even if they're not connected?
Anything from 2016 city limits on, yes.
Once they're connected.
So how do we determine that? Is anybody that's in that area we annex, we consider a future customer, even if they're not hooked up?
Could you repeat the question for me?
So anybody, okay, if there's a piece of property we decide to annex, and none of them are hooked up to Southwest Water, but there's 6 people in that 10 acres, we would have to pay you for the future customers then?
If it's,
I mean, that's the way I understand it. Any future customers hooked up or not.
I
So if we,
believe so. Outside of the current or the 2016 city limit boundary, which would be attached as Appendix A to the agreement and identified as our service area. If you annex customer or annex area in our service area, or not, if you serve water to customers within our service area, you would owe the compensation under the future customers, which is around 1,067.
And is that even if you do not have service there available? I mean, if you don't have any pipes running by these places?
If we have capacity, yes, to serve them.
So if somebody comes in and does it, you do hydraulic study, and you don't have any service there, you're gonna extend a line to them? You're just telling me that we would have to pay for that future customer, because you would extend a line to them even though your lines aren't there yet?
Correct.
And we talked about this quite a bit, because the question becomes, well, how many customers is that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if there's one customer that's right on the outskirts, I don't see them putting in a transmission line all the way out to get that one customer. So that's my question. It'd be cost thousands of dollars to hook on one customer.
And plating will drive that decision to a certain degree? Because we early on in these discussions, we were going down a much different path where we were trying to figure out how many residents per capita by density, and we abandoned that process because of its difficulties.
I mean, I totally buy into if we take over a customer that's theirs. I understand that. The future one, I mean, I don't know if I totally agree with that one, especially if they're not even on the system.
Yeah.
Or they don't have services even nearby. I mean, there's a lot of areas where you guys don't have services. And you're gonna come in and say, well, those are 5 future customers. Well, at what point in time would those be 5 future customers?
Yes. I guess the idea, if I can, I'll try to explain it, I guess. In our opinion, the infrastructure is there. The main transmission lines are there because we are limited by the amount of capacity we have. We can't charge you compensation if we don't have capacity. This is a rural water project, so running a line to serve a customer is what we do. And so getting a customer hooked up to our system, that would be a customer that we would have in perpetuity. We'd have a permanent revenue source. So spending thousands of dollars to get a customer, that's revenue for us. We have the intake, we have the water treatment facility, we have all the main infrastructure in place to serve customers in rural southwest North Dakota. So,
and I get that. I understand you have the capacity. I just don't find it hard to believe that if you had a main 6 miles away from somebody that wanted to sign onto your system, you would put a line all the way out to their place. I find that awfully hard to believe. It could cost $50,000, $100,000 just to hook up one customer.
I'm not sure. We could ask someone other than me. I'm not exactly sure how much it costs, but we are using smaller lines than you would be using in a city. We can use a 1-inch line or 1.5-inch.
I understand. I understand that.
If I may, Commissioner Fitter, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the customer pays for those service lines. It's not an expense to Southwest Water. They bring in the main, but they don't pay for the service line. So the expense in that regard might fall on the actual customer as opposed to the authority. Is that accurate, or is that?
But then I don't understand the 1,067 if they're not a customer. I mean, what are they recouping if they're not actually putting the line there? I don't.
Or getting $1,000+ and just 5-6 years down the road.
Yeah.
Haven't done it.
Lost revenue.
But he's not a customer yet, or
But he
might
would-
never be.
But he might be. If he's gonna be your customer, he might have been our customer.
And again, this is also served, we don't owe them that $1,000 until the customer is hooked up. So at that time, it's a proven need, a water need. And Commissioner Federer, there was a lot of hurdles, and that's why this took a long time. I don't want to delay matters, but you know, technically, one of the things I had to get over personally was they don't ever lose a customer. They just transition a customer from a rural to rural to an urban customer. That took a long time for me to process. So there are some things that are difficult, I think, at first. The term is 5 years, successive 5-year terms. So I would suggest that if we have issues, we will have an opportunity to renegotiate in 5 years on some of these terms. But I really appreciate the comments that are being made by commissioners, because it underscores the reason why this has taken a while. The other, I'm sorry, Attorney Kripe, I just wanted to mention one more thing that we talked about was when a rural customer, right now we're capped at 6 million gallons a day in usage. And one of the suggestions that I made was every time a rural customer turns into an urban customer, we should get a credit, and that gallons should go up beyond 6 million, because now it's our responsibility to serve instead of theirs. Ms. Massett and I had a conversation about that, and she agrees that a different agreement should probably be put in place for that, and this is not the one to address it. But so there was a great many things that were discussed. You brought up how to pay for this. If you remember, we created connection fees not long ago, and we charged $3,000 to connect to water and sewer, $3,000 each, and that's payable upon an issuance of building permit. One of the ways that we have to talk about is how we're going to pay for these things, because that's a hefty price tag right now. And the reason we did that is so that new customers, new residents to our community would pay for the wastewater treatment plant. We didn't think it was fair to have all those existing residents have to pay the full cost of that plant, and that new customers, new residents should bear some of that burden. So that's why those connection fees take place. But to put another for $3,000 to $4,000 won't be easy to just add that to a building permit or developer.
So, just so I'm clear, so we annex 20 acres, and there's currently 3 people that live in that 20 acres. We'd have to pay 3 times, correct?
That's correct.
Even if they're hooked up or not. If they're not hooked up, we'd pay that $1,000 future.
Nope, we don't pay that until they're hooked up to us.
Until they tie in.
Correct. To our line.
But then it would only be the $1,067, unless they were already a customer of Southwest
Unless
Water.
they're already a customer of Southwest Water. And then the $1,800. If they already are receiving service from Southwest Water, that $1,800 has been spent, so that'd have to be reimbursed as well.
And I just wanted to clarify something on that compensation model, just following Mr. Kessel's comments of my understanding after conversations with Mr. Dwyer is that the formula they came up with, yes, the rural customer would still be technically a downline customer of Southwest Water, but the formula that they came up with factors what revenue they will get from the city in bulk purchases. So it's not that they're not recognizing the down chain effect of the, still the water's coming from the same place. I believe that was reflected in the formula.
Correct.
And then the other item was, I know some other communities have negotiated on the term of the agreement, just depending on their comfort level and how long they want before they can renegotiate. And I believe Mr. Dwyer said that that's one of the items that they could negotiate on. Most of these things have some constraints on them by state or federal law. And then the 2 boards that are involved with the Water Commission as well, so.
I hate to keep beating a dead horse. I have another question, though. Let's say that the farmer has 1,000 acres, and we annex 20 acres of it, and there's no homesteads in that 20 acres. We would pay nothing.
Commissioner Frederick,
if he owns 1,000 acres and that 20 acres is all farmland, and there's no people living there, that would be 0 then.
correct. There's no compensation. There's no trigger based on annexation. The trigger would be service.
And when that is platted for 40 lots, we would pay 40
We would
Customers.
pay when the building permit
Customers.
is issued and the house is built and they tie in, then we would pay. So the obligation to pay is there upon annexation, but the requirement to pay is not there until service.
So what about all the platted subdivisions we have right now?
As long as they've been done before 2016, we're okay.
Okay, I'm good now.
Any other
Great questions.
comments, or, I guess I have just one, in section 3, the construction requirements, under the assignment or sharing of the easements. I don't know if we can word that differently. I guess to me, it seems a little bit, it should be massaged a little bit to make sure that we do. I know it's saying that you shall not unreasonably withhold that easement, but I know how tough easements are to get. So, I don't know if that's something we can talk about or negotiate a little bit more on.
President Decker, I assume you're talking about item 3A
A.
and the second sentence there.
Right. It says may convey. And since we're taking it over, I guess my concern, it would be ours now, basically within the city limits. So that we should have the ability to use it.
President Decker, the language, it is intended to give the authority and the commission flexibility to keep control over a line that's necessary for other project works. So if we have customers down the line, we need to keep that line in use. When there's lines that are no longer necessary, or when it's acceptable to share an easement or grant you a line, the authority in the project, if it's no longer necessary for the project, there would be no issue. And so what we felt, and I negotiated this provision with other attorneys for other cities, the trouble is spelling out every situation that could come up in the future. So it's one of those situations where you kind of just have to take our word for it.
We are recording this session.
I just know that easements are sometimes problematic. So, but, any other questions or comments? Mr. Dwyer or Ms. Berwick? If not, I guess I would look to the commission to, just we're looking to approve this or go back to negotiations, one or the two.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
We have a motion to approve this contract.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion or questions?
I think if there's some bad issues in it, I think with the other communities and so on, it'll come to light. And I'd hope at that time that even though it's a 5-year contract, we could come to some terms if it's grossly negligent or something.
I don't think that would be a problem.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve and a second. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you so much.
You have your contract.
Thank you.
And I think we are way past 5:55. So, up next, we will have Mr. Hirschfeld.
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. Come before you tonight to finish up what was left over from last Monday night's meeting. I'm going to step right into this. We'll start with parcel number 1170-1000-4200. That is a group home that was previously exempt. We placed a value on that. Had some economic obsolescence, looking to add value to the property true and full of $143,900. And that would be my recommendation if you would so choose.
Okay, upon Mr. Hirschfeld's recommendation, I would be looking for, I guess, a motion to approve the valuation of this retirement home.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? We'll vote on this recommendation on the motion. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Mr. President, Commissioners, thank you. Per your request, I did decrease apartments within the tolerance level. I was able to decrease another 15% to structure. That's a 25% total decrease to structure, or approximately 19 to 20% total decrease in value to apartments this year. Our ratio for commercial now sits at 90.8, which gets me just about as low to that 90% as I'm comfortable with, and leaves us, roughly $10 million of room between this ratio and then that lower threshold. So first, I guess we'll check with you and see if that's adequate to what your expectations were then.
Commission, any comments for Mr. Hirschfeld on the adjusted valuations?
I'm okay with that. Somewhere in here, I think you mentioned about if we need additional base, we apply it back to the apartments. Is that what you're saying?
That would be my suggestion. I really don't like getting below that 91% when we start doing the abstracts with the county and then to the state.
Right.
I mean, $10 million seems like a lot of money, but it just starts becoming close to rounding errors when you're talking about a $3 billion valuation and transferring those numbers. So I like to leave a little bit of a cushion.
Okay.
I guess I would look for a motion to deny, am I correct, the any further changes to the apartments?
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to deny any further change in value, and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Okay, that moves us to the Roars properties that were left over from last week. We just took care of the apartments that they had before us. I want to start into their vacant lots. And I have before you, I think it would have been on the second page of charts there, had improved lots are up at the top, the unimproved lots are at the bottom. We can start with the unimproved lots if you like. The request from the property owner was that these values be changed back to what they were in 2015. That was a county valuation that was for ag land only. I would not suggest we go back to that value. As far as that goes, requirements for properties that are within the city, there's 7 different requirements. They have to meet 4. Most of these properties met 5 of those 7 requirements. They're no longer considered agricultural properties. Being they didn't have water or sewer to them, I did go ahead and adjust them down 65%. That puts them in line with other like properties, specifically Dickinson Hills, which would be a competitive subdivision to theirs. And my recommendation would be to leave these properties with that 65% and to deny any further decrease.
Okay, we have a recommendation to approve at this current value.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
A motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion, questions? Not, we'll vote. Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Mr. President, Commissioners, thank you. In regards to the improved lots in West Ridge, I provided you a table that had the sales prices of all their lots that they've had in there. I neglected to leave the most recent one off of that. I apologize. There was a sale in March of 2017. That property sold for $11 a square foot. Our valuation on it was $9, and that ratio was 122%. I don't feel comfortable with trying to redo the work that Vanguard Appraisals did for us. I think they did a very good job. So what I wanted to point out to you tonight was the fact that each one of these lots have sold in excess of what the assessed value was on it. The ones that are closer to the 100% threshold were the properties that sold for full value and were used in that study. And so they're going to be close to that 100. We see a 103, a 1.01, or a 101. And they kind of set the value at that time. Following that, we put some obsolescence, if you will, some vacancy on that properties because they're sitting there, you know, they're not all selling at once. So we put vacancy on, and that was kind of what the request was from Roars, but I think they were seeking a higher vacancy based upon the sales that have occurred. If we consider these properties as what would that property sell for, you know, as of February 1st, then I think it paints a completely different picture than if we try and consider what does this group of properties, you know, what would they sell for, what would it take for them to sell for on that date. So I think if we stick with the valuation of a single parcel and looking at that these are all selling in excess of 22%, 60%, somewhere in there, my recommendation would be that we deny any further decrease to these properties, but maybe keep them in mind for future years, depending on what construction happens here in Dickinson.
Okay, we have a recommendation by Mr. Hirschfeld.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion, questions?
So we feel that $18 is a fair value on some of these, a square foot?
They initially, some of them sold in excess of that. It is a high price. The $18 is more reflective of those properties that have higher visibility from the main roads. We discount that once you get back off the main roads. It's like the most recent sale we had valued at $9, which is significantly less, but
Has there been anything in the last 2 years that sold even close to that?
probably not. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Do we know what they're currently marketing the property at per square foot?
I wasn't given that information either.
So we have a motion and a second on Mr. Hirschfeld's recommendations on this property. Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
No.
Chair votes aye.
Mr. President, Commissioners, thank you. That concludes everything that we were carrying over. For your information, I did also forward on, there was a property that the board elected to make a change to. I see that the applicant is also in attendance here, and I believe he wishes to address you at your discretion.
Well, I know the public hearing part is over, but if he does want to come forward, I know there has been a change. Am I correct? Even though we went to the $170 square foot, it actually increased the value?
It did increase the value of that property approximately $800,000.
Have you had a discussion with the property owner, the representative?
Not beyond him discussing his willingness to come back down before you this evening.
Okay. Do you know the numbers?
You can come up. Go ahead and
Please.
come up. State your name for the camera.
So what
My name's Kelly Peterson. Just for everybody's information, when I was given this big report from Joe, pretty hard to understand, pretty hard to read. Last time I came here, I was using this number that's up on the top page. What I found out this week was that number was a commercial property. He reduced it to a residential number. So there was a little bit of miscommunication in the numbers that I was providing, how to read the report. That did bring the numbers back down to about that 170 level. But last week when I was here, when I drove away, I was thinking to myself, I'd agree with that 170 price if these were stick-built, and these are modular again. And so I guess my comment, what I'd like to address is, and I wasn't looking at the old first phase cottages, I was looking at just the brand-new cottages. That was pretty much the bulk of this higher assessment on the property. And so what I was gonna ask the commission is if they would be willing to give a certain discount. I was trying to bring up 10% because they're modular, and I would ask that because of the uniqueness of this leased land on campus, on state ground, it's not like any other lease. He's comparing it to leases like out at a lake and given a 10% discount. I would ask for another small discount because it's such a unique project on leased land. And so, with that, I would ask for 10% based on modular, 10% based on leased land, based on his very first numbers. And then the only other thing I would ask, I know I'm asking for the world here, is this is such a large increase for this property. Is there any way you could stage this over a couple-year period so you wouldn't have to take such a big hit in 1 year?
We gotta be fair to everyone. I don't think we can do that. We
When the
can't
percentage is as
adjust from
high
year
as
to
it
year.
is.
I don't believe we're allowed to.
So let me back up a little bit. The prior total was 5,782,500. We're gonna look at it at $170 a square foot. That changed it up to $6,589,028. We're gonna back off that. What you're asking for is a 10% less on the 5,782,000, and then 10% on the lease situation.
On the land value.
On the, right. So, just on the land value, yeah. So we're actually looking at another 700-some thousand less than the 5,782,000, correct? Somewhere in there.
Yes, it sounds like we're somewhere
Now,
back.
are we asking, or is he asking us to do something that we could not do for anybody else?
Well, as the board, at your discretion, you have the ability to add as much obsolescence as you wish on this. I stated with the numbers I did, that's what I could support. I'd ask for additional information, at least to have something in my file. It is a unique property, so, it's really.
And they're up for sale, correct? So, I mean, we could see a sale in a year or less.
We might see it sooner than that.
Which would then put all this in perspective. We would have true numbers for the following year.
Correct. Yeah.
Personally, I have no problem with the recommendation from him. The 10 and the 10. I think it's.
But your request, Mr. Peterson, is for the original number, not the
Original number.
170.
Yeah. off
So
the
the
5
original
million.
number would be 5.7 million,
No. 5,782,000.
Okay. and not the new adjusted $170 square foot.
Nope, we'd just take off, no, we'd forget
Well,
about the 170.
To be honest, I'm not quite clear where exactly we're at on this either. One thing I'll need is more clarification, I guess.
I think what he's asking is that we acknowledge the prior total.
Do you have that number, Mr. Hirschfeld, the prior total?
5,782,500.
Is that correct?
That was the value that I brought before the board, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you're requesting that total minus with a 20% discount.
Putting 10% on land.
Right, for the lease.
And
Correct.
lands,
Well, I was going, yeah, well, yes, right.
Yeah.
I believe that's how we're
And we're
getting to that number.
eliminating the request to postpone or implement over the course of time.
Right, I guess that's.
Yeah, I don't think
The
we can.
the land value is $1,483,000. So we're talking less than 148,000 there.
right?
The balance would be 10% of the structure value, which is $5,105,000. So 10% off that is another 510,000. 510 and 100.
570.
10%.
So 650,000.
Yeah.
You know,
Which would take,
and Carson, I would go with you on this one because, for one thing, this is kind of like the hospital property. It's property we've never actually collected any income tax or any property tax on. You know, the old hospital for 100 years, we never collected any property tax.
Is this the first year it's on our rolls?
It'll be the first year that these cottages are, yes.
Yeah.
And
I would feel comfortable with that. They're actively trying to sell them. I think that'll give us true numbers.
So then you come in with a total that's 6.6 or 5,100,000.
Yeah, somewhere in there, yep.
And certainly if it's the board's wish, we could set a flat fee on this. That is easy for me to implement then, you know, if you pull out a round number, say $5 million, if that's the target number, I can put that on very simply. We don't have to worry about the 10% to this or 10% to that.
I would say 5,100,000 is pretty close to the exact number. It's off by 32,000, which is.
If you're ready for a motion, I think
I'm ready.
Okay, I'd move we adjust the total to 5,100,000 and assess accordingly.
I would second that.
That's sufficient motion and direction, Mr. Hirschfeld?
It is, thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Board, that's all that I have for you this evening.
Okay, so we can complete, we need a motion to send the rolls to the county?
I believe so, Mr. Bush.
Okay, so I'll be looking for a motion to complete the rolls and forward them to the county.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Friedrich?
Aye.
Ms. Jennings?
Aye.
Mr. Altman?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Guess you got some work to do.
I do. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. Where did we leave off?
National Public Works Week.
Yep, we got the proclamation. Now we're gonna have a,
Yep, now it's all report, sit back and have some popcorn, no more decisions.
yeah, who's got popcorn? No one said anything about popcorn.
Thank you, President Decker and Commission members. After the proclamation, I wanted to talk about our public works activities that are scheduled May 21st through May 27th. This year's theme is Public Works Connect Us from the American Public Works Association. Next slide, please. Some of the things we're planning and have scheduled already are tours of the water reclamation facility. There are a couple days, and I put the phone number on there if you're interested on those tours. I believe it's Tuesdays and Thursdays of that week. Just call 456-7979. And I was trying to make it exciting. The letters 79, if you put them in letters, are PW and then PW, so it's PW, 456. So we're also doing tours of the Public Works facility. And if you're interested, you can call those numbers too also. We are planning approximately, that should be 175 third and fourth graders are planning to tour the Public Works building. We are setting up different stations. They'll learn about trees from the state forester. We are cutting different logs, and the state forester will talk about years and how trees grow. We are going to visit the East Water Tank that is on the Public Works facility. We're going to learn about stormwater, see street and solid waste equipment in action, and be able to sign a snowplow blade that is getting painted. Next slide, please. I really wanted to have this for tonight's meeting. We didn't get it finished. Morgan with the Solid Waste Department has volunteered her painting and her artwork. That's as far as she got a couple days ago. It's going to be painted, and then we'll have all the kids come and sign their names on it. So next year you might see this coming down the road. Don't be surprised. There's more graphics on there and then all the names, so it'll be out in the public. And I'm really hoping that the third and fourth graders will be excited about this. And I just wanted to say a couple more things about Public Works Week, and we're also having lunch for all the staff on a Monday. The recent growth of the community has added numerous miles of streets and infrastructure, new lift stations, water reservoirs, booster stations, and a new water reclamation facility. All these improvements, along with our new Public Works building, has definitely changed the look of Public Works, bringing all the divisions together, all the wonderful new facilities we've acquired, and along with the equipment. But one of those great things about the new facilities, it's now our responsibility to operate and maintain for future generations. We spent millions of dollars, and we're focusing on operating and maintaining that equipment and those infrastructure, vertical or horizontal, for a long time. And one of the ways we're doing that is implementing some software on work management, trying to get a good operation to maintain this multi-million-dollar facilities. And I guess lastly, I just want to say our vision in Public Works, and we don't say it enough, that week we're going to be promoting it along with the Connect Us, dealing with the public, working with the public, putting our numbers out there, trying to be proactive instead of reactive, is a commitment to excellence in providing dependable, professional, high quality, and responsive public works and utility services through sound management, innovation, and teamwork for the city of Dickinson and Southwest North Dakota. We, as I said, with our new software called OpWorks, we're starting to implement Recollect with solid waste and streets. That'll be coming in the next couple months. They're all, both try to help communication with the public and track different service requests, work management orders, everything else. So we're trying to move in a positive direction. Any comments, questions you guys have, please contact me or division manager. I would be glad to show you around, talk about it. Areas of improvement, there always are areas to improve. Be glad to discuss that with you.
Any questions or comments from Mrs. Zuroff? Thank you. Up next, we'll have a water utilities presentation by our utilities manager, Mr. Ballesteros.
Good evening, President Decker and City Commissioners. My name is Adam Ballesteros. I'm the Water Utilities Manager, and I'll be making a presentation about Public Works Week. This is from one of the APWA posters that we're always there, and so has some different divisions within our utility, and other municipalities also have additional divisions that we don't have here. So I like to think about Public Works as when everything is going right, you shouldn't have to think about us. Today we're out with the fire department flushing fire hydrants and getting some flow testing for them. We had quite a number of complaints about yellow water, and so the public is aware that something is going on, and so in that case we respond to it, investigate it, let them know the water is safe to drink. Under normal circumstances, that's not the case, and so you shouldn't notice us when your trash is getting picked up, when the streets are plowed and cleaned, when your water's running, toilets flushing, storm water. So what do we do in the Water Utilities Department, and how do we benefit the community? So how it works in the Water Utilities Department is the City of Dickinson buys our water from Southwest Water Authority at their Broadway Water Treatment Plant, and this is Broadway out front to the right. Once treated, the water is then pumped by the finished water pump station, which is on the right-hand side of the photo, through the City of Dickinson's water distribution system. And on the left-hand side, there's Southwest Water's water treatment plant. The water distribution system pumps water through the distribution system into tanks, main service lines, and homes. There's 6 of our water storage locations. There's a Northwest Tower out on the west part of town, million-gallon clear well on 10th Avenue East. The North Tower up by Walmart, 4th Avenue East water tower on the top of the hill there. East Side Water Tank, that was a picture from Pictometry where it wasn't completed yet, and that's at our Public Works building on the east side of town, and the State Avenue Water Tank, which is predominantly viewed from I-94. When you get water at your house, you can drink the water, you can cook with it, you can bathe with it, water your lawn, wash your car. So there's many things you can do with the water that's purchased from us. The collected wastewater at your house, it goes down the sink drain, down the tub drain, down the toilet. This water is called wastewater. A lot of what Mike Berg also spoke about earlier are some of our lift stations shown here. Water typically flows by gravity until it reaches a low point, then it's lifted to a higher elevation where it's pumped through a force main, either to another lift station or to an area where it can be gravity fed. The City of Dickinson has 19 lift stations, and 7 of them are shown here. And kind of our newest one, we don't have a picture of 14 on here. So everything from all of these lift stations, it eventually flows into lift station number 1, and that's down on Broadway and 6th, approximately where the old wastewater treatment plant was at, and that's shown up here in the upper left-hand corner. From there, it pumps to the influent pump station, and that's just to the northwest of the water reclamation facility. So wastewater flows by gravity, as I mentioned earlier, and through a gravity main or to a lift station, and a lift station pumps it, or force main, into the influent pump station, which is the final destination before it reaches the plant. Wastewater from the influent pump station pumps to the WRF, where it's treated and reused either for irrigation water, reuse water for sales, including the frac sales that are going on today, or discharge into the Hart River, and also discharge into Lagoon Cell number 4 if we'd like to use that excess capacity later. Here's a picture of the WRF. It's out on, if you drive all the way down 8th Street to the east and dead ends, and there's a plant in the admin buildings up in the upper right-hand corner. So some of the people that are work in the department, that's a picture of myself, Water Utilities Department Manager. Some of my duties include supervising department staff, ensure that work is performed according to specifications and standards, and that what we're doing is in compliance with state and federal regulators. Brad Stieg was recently promoted. He's our Chief Water Distribution Operator. I asked all these guys if that's the picture they wanted, and just some of them look a little criminal. I said, guys, there's a lot of people going to see these pictures. Yeah, so down below they're holding their number, but they said that's fine, and so these are the pictures we use. So these are all incredible men that help out in our operation, and also a woman that also helps with us. This is he's the Chief Water Distribution Operator, oversee the day-to-day operation of the potable water network, also perform water sampling, keeps the tanks filled, looking at the SCADA system. So our Senior Operator Bruce Carey here on the left, and Travis Thiessen, and Zach King are also some of our operators. So some of the duties of the Water Distribution Department include handling service calls, citizen concerns, meter repair and replacement, perform regularly scheduled required testing to meet state and federal water compliance regulations, and also obtain monthly water readings for utility billing department, and investigate suspicious high or low water usage. Here's Kyle Price. He's the Chief Wastewater Collections Operator. He suggests replacements for equipment or repair on facilities, maintain inventory. We also camera and televise sewer mains for repair, replacement, or investigation if there's something that we need to find out. So some of the people in that department, and we're all under the same roof, we all meet in the same room. It's just the budgeting part of it and where the revenues go for it. So our Senior Operator is Trent Houston. He's actually going to be moving to, I believe, Bozeman? Oh, Missoula, Montana. And so we're going to have an open job opening for that position. And some of our operators here, Mr. Josh Burris, Yoel Heredia, Lee Magstadt, and Jake Olheiser. Some of the duties of the wastewater collection department include inspection, maintenance and repair of equipment, machines, tools, and vehicles. We also perform the operation and maintenance on lift stations, sanitary sewer mains, and also the cleaning of those mains and any other necessary equipment. We also investigate sewer I&I, which is what Mr. Berg was talking about earlier, for infiltration and inflow, and to prevent lift station overflows or AOCs, which are abnormal operating conditions. Dwayne Zastapel, he's in charge of our industrial waste and stormwater utilities chief, provides public and employee education materials and training, storm drain easements, improvements, and maintenance, ensure contractor compliance with stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is also commonly known as SWIP, and also takes care of our MS4 for the city, ensures community awareness programs are in place to get people involved, knowledgeable about that you're not supposed to flush the quote flushable wipes, illicit discharges, mud tracking, litter conveyed by storm drains, etc. Some of his duties include participating in the spring cleanup, recycling, adopting a roadway, report spills for compliance, inspect homes, for illicit discharge. And work with City of Dickinson Street Department to keep storm system debris free. Earlier, I think I can't remember what meeting I was at, there was a slide mentioning how much sand and salt we put down on the road this year. All that ends up in the storm drains. Typically, unless the street department comes and sweeps it up, which they've been doing a great job of doing, so that helps keep our storm drains clean and not reducing the system capacity with materials and debris at the bottom of those. We also have assistance from 2 individuals. I don't have a picture of the other individual, but this is Clorinda Middleton, and she's a research analyst, and she works part-time through Experience Works. The city doesn't pay for that. That's a state program. So we also have another gentleman, Russ Carson, who works for us, and I just don't have a photo of him. She assists with the Water Utilities Department in asset management, data entry, invoice record keeping, and invoice entry, performs research for upcoming projects, and she assists the department with projects as needed. Russ does also a lot of different things, and including most recently cutting some of those wood chips to prepare for Public Works Week, and kind of odds and ends that we have around the building. So very, very happy to have everyone here. Same thing, Mr. Director Zuroff showed a picture of this earlier with Morgan painting the snowplow, and so we're getting ready for Public Works Week student tours next week. I just want to thank you for giving us the resources we need to complete our duties and to maintain and fund new and existing infrastructure. This in turn helps to take care of his future citizens of Dickinson. Like my boy there running through my paperwork as I was trying to get this ready here, so.
It's nice when he comes in and get things done.
He does a great job, so. Thank you all for your time, I appreciate it, and like I said, once again, thank you for the assistance you give us.
Well, thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Ballesteros? Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are back to Mr. Zuroff. We have a recycling bid update.
Yes, last Wednesday, we received the RFPs for the recycling. This time we had received 2 RFPs. We have not gone totally through them all and looked at all the differences, but both just for price. First of all, they were both 10-year contracts is what they submitted. Both prices were $6 plus at the beginning, $7 plus at the end of 10 years. One was Trans-Trash out of Bismarck, Mandan. One was Renaissance out of Jamestown. And I guess I wanted to report that and see how we wanted to move forward. I'd like to maybe set up a meeting. I think Ms. Jennings and I can't remember who else had requested on the first time we talked about this, and with Mr. Kessel and maybe plan a meeting and to go through these RFPs. So I wanted to give you a quick update on that. So maybe just get a hold of me on your times and we can set up a meeting.
There's some dates to avoid. Ms. Jennings is getting married.
Oh, okay.
But I have time before then.
Okay. I will contact you and we'll figure out the best time and dates to meet and go through the RFPs.
Go ahead and send me an email too.
Okay. Appreciate that. And one more thing that Mr. Proust just gave me before the meeting is we just discussed the electronic waste with Electronics Reuse and Recycling Company. They are planning on coming to Dickinson, and we'll get this information out. 3 days, beginning Thursday, July 20th, and ending Saturday, July 22nd.
And that's an electronic recycling, old
Electronic
computers
recycling.
and fax machine.
And we'll have it at the Baylor.
Okay.
There are no fees for computers, printers, stereos, video games, etc. They will charge for some CRT monitors, some flat panel TVs. But anyway, look for the information. I'm excited that we can bring an e-cycling 3-day event to Dickinson this summer. So wanted to give you an update on that.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Zuroff? Okay, we'll jump down to 10. Anything from the commission? Commissioners have anything they wish to discuss tonight? Hearing nothing, I'll open up for the public, for public issues of city concern not on our agenda. Anyone from the public would like to come forward, please state your name, and we will hear your concerns. Seeing no one from the public, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.